Mangwanani Malelepo Vukenjani Qeqas Vanave Africa. Welcome to Africa Good Morning, the news and current affairs show bringing you everything you need to know happening on the African continent and beyond. My name is Ashwin Mbedi and today I am joined by Glenora Shipura. Good morning, Glenora.
Good morning, Ashwin. Today is Chocolate Day. Celebrated on February 9th, Chocolate Day makes your bond special with that one thing that's sweeter than love, chocolates. Gift him or her a basket of delicious homemade chocolates oozing with cream and truffles. Now let's have a look at this wonderful video on chocolate.
Today is Wednesday, the 9th of February, and these are your top stories. We start off with the UN. 13 million face hunger in Horn of Africa as drought worsens. An estimated 13 million people in the Horn of Africa are facing severe hunger, the United Nations World Food Programme has said. Drought conditions have affected pastoral and farmer populations across southern and southeastern Ethiopia, southeastern and northern Kenya, and south-central Somalia, with forecasts of below-average rainfall threatening to worsen already dire conditions in the coming months. Shortages of water and pasture due to 3 consecutive failed rainy seasons have decimated crops and caused abnormally high livestock deaths. Now the WFP said families are being forced from their homes, leading to increased conflicts between communities. Earlier this month, its children's agency UNICEF said more than 6 million people in Ethiopia are expected to need urgent humanitarian aid by mid-March.
Now, in our next story, Tunisian police close offices of top judicial watchdog, locking staff out. Tunisian police on Monday blocked access to the country's top judicial watchdog in a move its chief slammed as illegal, 2 days after President Kais Saied dissolved the body. Security forces blocked all roads to the Supreme Judicial Council headquarters in Tunis. Said Saied dissolved the body on Sunday, months after sacking the government and seizing wide-reaching powers in Tunisia. He vowed on Monday that he would not interfere in court cases or judicial appointments. Saied had said to the Sunday that the CGSM was corrupt and had delayed politically sensitive investigations into the assassinations of left-wing opposition figures.
All right, in our next story, NATCOM warns against threats to bomb KM the Third Airport. Subsequent to circulating information about the threats to bomb aircraft at the King Mswati III International Airport, National Commissioner of Police William Dlamini has disclosed that those who would be behind that mission should know that they would be taking a high risk as the police were ready and dangerously armed to ensure safety. A contingent of police officers from the Operational Support Services Unit, as well as members of the Umbutfo Eswatini Defense Force, have been added to the existing security personnel based at the international airport. Now, the NATCOM said those perpetuating such violence should know that they would be injured and advised that people should stop the threats as the police were taking them seriously. He said the threats were being analyzed to ascertain where they came from and who was behind them. Dlamini emphasized that security measures had been tightened to ensure that property was protected. Umbutfo Eswatini Defense Force Public Relations Officer Tengetile Kumalo said operations and redeployment at the army was treated as classified information.
Israel PM vows action as police Pegasus spying scandal widens. Israel's domestic spying scandal widened with Prime Minister Naftali Bennett vowing government action following new reports that police illegally used the Pegasus malware to hack phones of dozens of prominent figures. The latest bombshell from Business Daily Calculist alleged that Pegasus was used against a son of former Premier Benjamin Netanyahu and his advisors, as well as activists, senior government officials, businessmen, and others. It had previously been reported that the controversial malware, which can turn a phone into a pocket spying device, was used by police against leaders of an anti-Netanyahu protest movement. The reports apparently describe a very grave situation that is unacceptable in a democracy, Bennett said.
All right, around 10 million people living with HIV still not on antiretroviral therapy. Newly published research from the Netherlands has revealed the existence of more transmissible and a damaging variant of HIV. People living with the newly revealed HIV subtype experience double the rate of immune system decline, have higher HIV viral loads, which is the amount of virus in the blood, and are vulnerable to developing AIDS 2 to 3 times faster after diagnosis than if they were living with other strains of the virus. The study, led by researchers from the University of Oxford's Big Data Institute, was the first to discover the subtype B of the virus. The study also revealed that the variant has been circulating in the Netherlands for years and remains receptive to HIV treatment. All right, that brings us to the end of the first half of our top stories. More news after the break.
Now, thank you for staying with Africa Good Morning. In our next story, will UK end its IELTS over growing pressure? Ghana has joined Nigeria in challenging the need for an English proficiency test as part of their requirements for prospective Ghanaian students to gain entry into the UK or US for further studies or work. The second Deputy Speaker of Parliament, Andrew Amalko Asamiya, directed the Education and Foreign Affairs Committees to investigate circumstances under which Ghanaians are required to provide proof of English proficiency before gaining admission into foreign universities. This directive came after members of the House expressed concerns about the issue. Members of Parliament for South Ndayi constituency, Roxanne Nelson Defemokwa, in his statement argued that as a member of the Commonwealth and English is a Ghanaian official language, no student could progress beyond junior high school without a pass in English language.
Now in our next story, FGM heavy on Nigeria as world calls for an end to the practice. An estimated 200 million women and girls around the world have undergone female genital mutilation, with 80% of the cases in Africa alone. The United Nations said this as the world marked the International Day of Zero Tolerance for Female Genital Mutilation on February 6. Majority of the girls who have undergone this practice are below 15 years of age. The COVID-19 pandemic has increased the risk of female genital mutilation, with the UN predicting that an additional 2 million girls will be victimized in the next 10 years. Now, the United Nations Children Fund has said that Nigeria accounts for the third highest number of women and girls who have undergone female genital mutilation globally, with an estimated 19.9 million survivors.
Very tragic. Moving on to our next story, humanitarian crisis feared as cyclone kills 21 in Madagascar. Cyclone Batsirai swept out of Madagascar on Monday after killing 21 people, displacing 70,000 and devastating the drought-hit island's agricultural heartland, leading the UN to warn of a worsening humanitarian crisis. Madagascar was already reeling from a tropical storm which killed 55 people late last month, and the latest extreme weather event came as South African President Cyril Ramaphosa said the continent is bearing both the brunt and the cost of global warming. After drenching the fellow Indian Ocean island of La Réunion, Batsirai made landfall in Madagascar's east on Saturday evening, bringing heavy rain in the winds of 165 kilometers per hour. Batsirai spared the capital Antananarivo and the island's main port, Tamatave, which led to a lower death toll than had been initially feared by the authorities and aid organizations, who had warned that nearly 600,000 people could be affected.
All right, in our next story, 19 arrested on suspicion of stealing oil in Nigeria. The Nigerian Security and Civil Defense Corps on Monday said that it had arrested 19 people on suspicion of stealing oil in southern Nigeria's River State in recent operations against vandalism. The suspects were found on Friday and Saturday with 3 tanker trucks, a large wooden boat, and many liters of petroleum products that were thought to be illegally made diesel, the head of Nigeria's paramilitary agency in the state, Abu Tambuwal, said. Now, he said they made the arrests and seizures to support the state government's campaign against illegal refineries, partly responsible for the soot pollution in the state. The officer said NSCDC investigators were currently grilling the 19 suspects and made clear that they would be charged in court if they were found culpable of the crime.
Now, in our next story, NDF pushes ahead with mandatory vaccines in Namibia. The Namibia Defense Force says it will forge ahead with a plan that will see all eligible members vaccinated for COVID-19. Defense Ministry spokesperson Petrus Shilumbu said the directive will remain in force until all eligible members of the NDF have been vaccinated. Defense Chief Martin Pinhas last October ordered all eligible NDF members to get vaccinated.
All right, that brings us to the end of our top stories. Now, it's no secret that COVID-19, it ravaged many an industry, and one of those was obviously tourism. So they've come up with what's called the Trusted Travel System, which is a system that's meant to, I guess, grease the wheels with regards to tourism getting back on the road again. Stick around for that and more after the break.
We lose ourselves in the spirit of things. We lose our sight when we put our trust in things of this material world, of things that fade away. Yet we keep coming back, 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 keep coming back.
Thank you for staying with Africa. Good morning. Now, Frida Andreas from the Ministry of Health and Social Services sheds more light on travel systems that make travels to and from Namibia much easier in the times of COVID-19. To watch this interview.
All right, with us in studio today, we have Miss Frida Andreas, who is the Public Health Administrator for TTS at the Ministry of Health and Social Services. And she's here to inform our listeners and viewers about a travel system that will allow you to travel to Namibia or leave the country more easily during this time of COVID-19. Good morning, Miss Andreas. How are you?
Good morning, sir. How are you?
Fantastic. It's good to have you here. Now, could you kindly tell us about the Trusted Travel System, which is due to be adopted in Namibia?
Thank you very much, which has actually been adopted.
All right,
right?
it's already here. Yes.
Yeah, well, the Trusted Travel System is a web-based system that provides support to standardized protocols of verifying COVID-19 test results for international travelers, and by doing so, actually facilitate the reopening of borders for international travelers, essential goods, and so on. So the Trusted Travel System was developed under the auspices of the Africa CDC, African Union, Africa Center for Disease Control. So what travelers do on this system is actually upload their result and generate certain codes, which they will now use at the point of entry, or ports as we call them, to now be verified, and port health officials can now certify themselves with the travelers' results as they are being presented on the system.
All right, so what do people have to do to register or be registered?
Okay, for travelers to get registered on the Trusted Travel System, they just need to go on their browser using any type of browser they use by entering trustedtravel.org. Not Trusted Travel at panabios.org or globalhaven@panabios.org. They will follow all the steps and then they create an account for themselves. And then after then, if they are coming from a country that doesn't have the system in place, then they will have to now upload their own results. Otherwise, if they are coming from a country that is like Namibia that has gone live on the system, they will get their results uploaded by the laboratory where they have their results or their tests done and then generate codes at the end of the process.
It really does sound very efficient. So I have to ask, like, are all border points trained up? You know what I mean? What happens if there's an immigration officer that just doesn't get it?
Okay. Actually, the person that deals with our Trusted Travel System or the person that deals with border clearance when it comes to COVID-19 is not immigration officials, but port health officials, environmental health practitioners who are at the borders.
All right.
So yes, so what happens is a traveler comes with a code. It's not so much that, you know, it's just a code that you enter on the system and then the results will appear.
Okay.
So when there are instances where a traveler may come and say, I cannot upload the results, but also it depends on what reasons you are giving us. We cannot always subject you to, you know, having the system in place if you are having challenges. So the port health official will look at the reason that you are giving them, and if it's satisfying enough, they will allow you perhaps to proceed. But in most cases, what we do is we will actually have somebody on standby to create an account for you and have your results uploaded on the system. But that depends also on the availability and the number of people available that day to assist the travelers.
All right, very interesting.
Yes.
Is there anything else you'd like to add on the Trusted Travel System?
I would want to say travelers should always try to create their accounts in advance. Do not try to create your account on your way to the airport because you know when the internet can disappoint you all, right?
Yeah.
So for you to avoid inconveniences and stuff, you should try to create your account even before you think of traveling. Just have it ready, because when you have it ready, you can play around with it. It does not stop you from doing anything. It allows you to get used to it.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, it's sort of like how everybody adapts to applications
Exactly,
these days.
exactly.
Okay, we're just
Yeah.
talking to Ms. Frida Andreas, who is the Public Health Administrator at the Ministry of Health and Social Services, and we were talking about the Trusted Travel System, which is set to make traveling to and from Namibia much, much easier. This is To Africa. Good morning. Keep you informed. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much, sir. I'm happy to be here, actually.
All right. It's good to have you here disseminating that important information. More after the break.
Are you aware of the medical waste generated during the pandemic? How does that impact your health, and what can you do to reduce this medical waste? Hello and welcome to Science in 5. I'm Vismita Gupta-Smith. We are talking to Dr. Margaret Montgomery today about medical waste. Welcome, Margaret. Let's start, Margaret, by please describe for us what this medical waste is that has been generated during the pandemic.
Medical waste is all the waste that results from vaccinations, from testing for COVID-19, as well as for caring for patients in healthcare facilities and homes. So this is vaccine needles, vials, testing reagents, testing swabs, as well as all the personal protective equipment that health workers are using, such as masks and aprons, as well as carers and the patients themselves. In terms of the scale, it's massive. We've all seen discarded masks on the streets, and in 2020 alone, 4.5 trillion additional disposable mass were thrown away by the public, resulting in 6 million extra tons of waste. In our own analysis, looking at the extra waste loads at healthcare facilities, we found that it increased by 3 to 4 times during this pandemic. And in facilities that didn't segregate their healthcare waste, the increase was 10 times greater, which really shows that segregation is very important because only 20% of healthcare waste is infectious and hazardous and requires extra care and treatment. At the same time, we know that 1 in 3 healthcare facilities globally before the pandemic lacked ways to safely segregate and treat waste. And on the sub-Saharan continent, this is 2 in 3 healthcare facilities. So we have the combined double burden of already weak systems for waste management, coupled by the fact that health workers are extremely overburdened with increased patient loads and can't manage the existing waste, let alone extra waste.
Maggie, as you just described, medical waste is not a new problem. Talk to us, please, about the health impact, the impact on our health as well as our planet's health of this medical waste.
There's many adverse impacts from unsafely managed and treated healthcare waste. So needle stick injuries cause many hepatitis B and C infections every year. There's also other infectious pathogens that are spread through bandages and other infectious waste, some of which are not treatable through existing antimicrobials. There's also all the dangers that are involved with burning waste, and in particular, plastic can lead to the release of dioxins and furans, which are carcinogenic and can really harm not only those working in healthcare facilities, but those vulnerable communities that surround where healthcare waste is being burned. Lastly, there's a lot we don't know about plastics in the environment, and increasingly we're finding that microplastics are showing up in our waterways and our food systems. These are all concerns about healthcare waste.
Maggie, just the scale of this problem seems so huge. What can we do as individuals to reduce this medical waste?
There's 3 main things the public can do. The first is to become aware and take it as your personal responsibility to understand the amount of waste you're generating and how you can reduce those volumes to begin with. So for example, gloves are not needed in many situations, so reducing things that aren't needed can reduce volumes of waste. The second is to be a conscious consumer and actively seek high-quality reusable PPE. And in particular, in high-income countries, increasingly we're finding that very high-quality reusable masks are available, and those would be preferred. In places where high-quality reusable masks aren't available and disposables are the only option, it's also important to think about recycling these masks. And increasingly we're finding that recycled masks are being put to use to make roads and other building materials. Lastly, the packaging. It's really important to try to seek products that use more ecological packaging and paper-based packaging instead of plastics. And I also just want to emphasize that the government also has an important role by creating and implementing strong healthcare waste policies that are backed by regular budgets and financing, in supporting the recycling sector so all that waste that isn't infectious can be put to other uses, and lastly in investing in high quality locally manufactured PPE, which not only can reduce carbon emissions from transporting goods long distances, but it can also help fulfill commitments that were recently made around low carbon and sustainable health systems. So in short, we can no longer afford to ignore the impact on the environment. The good news is it's possible to prevent and protect against COVID-19 and the environment, and I call on each of you to do your part.
Thank you, Maggie. That was Science in 5 today. Until next time then, stay safe, stay healthy, and stick with science.
Stick with science. Indeed. Thank you for staying with Africa. Good morning as we continue bringing you the news happening on the African continent and beyond. Now, speaking of the African continent, Africa Good Morning prides itself on being your reliable source for decentralized African news. So keeping that in mind, let's have a chat with our correspondent Mike Sichula in Zambia. Good morning, Mike. How are you?
Africa, good morning. I'm very well, thank you. How are you doing?
I am fantastic. Mike, could you please take us into your first story about health authorities who will soon commence the recruitment of over 11,000 health workers?
Yes, the Ministry of Health, they want to recruit 11,200 health workers. That includes nurses, doctors, and other related health workers. As you may be aware, Zambia has a doctor to patient ratio of 1 doctor for every 2,000 patients, which is against the recommended World Health Organization ratio of 1 doctor per 1,000 people of the population. So currently, as we speak, there are less than 1 million doctors working in Zambia today and registered with the Zambia Medical Council. So this is a situation that has created a high doctor-patient ratio in the country. In terms of nurses, there are a number of nurses that have remained unemployed. In terms of doctors that are seeking employment, there are close to 800 doctors that have been trained, but they do not have employment. So the Minister of Finance, during the presentation of the 2022 budget, did indicate that the government was going to recruit 11,200 health workers. But this was supposed to come in January, and it has not happened, and it has raised discontent amongst medical doctors who are trained but not employed, and they had threatened that in the next 1 week, if the process does not start, they are going to march to State House to complain to President Hakainde Hichilema. However, the Ministry of Health has come out to say the process of recruiting these health workers has started administratively, and by April of this year, the full process is going to kickstart. Because what the ministry is doing is that to understand which health centers across the country need what particular health workers. So this is what the Ministry of Health has started administratively to identify which areas and which doctors, which type of nurses are needed, and the like. So this is what is going on presently before in April, when the full process is going to start.
All right,
Then
Mike.
in my
Mike,
second story,
sorry, if you could please just keep your stories as brief as possible.
Yes, then in my second story, a losing candidate in the recent parliamentary election has shocked the nation by questioning the credibility of the poll after it emerged that at the polling station where he voted from, he got a 0 vote, despite him voting for himself and other members of the party. This seat was won by the UPND candidate, Mr. Andrew Kayenga. So this situation, as you can see from the picture there, that is the candidate on the left, and his ballot is on the right, and it is clearly marked that he voted for himself. But when the counting was done for that particular polling station, it emerged that he got 0 vote, and is now questioning the Electoral Commission of Zambia, which has said they are going to investigate the matter when they get down to all the statistics that were collected on that particular day, on the 3rd of February 2022. Then in my third story, a former bodyguard to President Edgar, a bodyguard to former President Edgar Lungu has been arrested by police for an offense he reported to have committed about 2 years ago. That's him there in the picture, Mr. Chisanga Chanda. It is alleged that Mr. Chanda, on a known date, but between the 1st of October 2019 and 4th February 2002 in Lusaka, did commit an offense of assisting a suspect. So there is a suspect who police were investigating, but Mr. Chanda, being with the privilege of being a bodyguard to President Lungu, whilst he was in office, he assisted this suspect to evade police arrest. So he's been questioned. He was picked up last week on Friday. He was questioned until he was charged on Monday this week. So this case is yet to unfold, but that's the state of affairs. It is making headlines here in Zambia. Then in my last story, sports, Zambia's football exports to Scotland. Fashion Sakala has kept scoring for his side, Glasgow Rangers, to put pressure on leaders Celtic, who are just a point above Rangers. So Fashion Sakala scored the last goal of the game as Rangers thrashed Hearts of Merodons 5-0 in 25 tie to put pressure on leaders Celtic, who are just a point above Celtic. 60 points. So this is what Fashion Sakara has been doing, and as we know, Zambia will be starting to prepare for the Africa Cup of Nations this month.
Yes, indeed, and we're looking forward to see how that transpires, because personally, I'd have loved to watch Fashion Sakala in the AFCON final. Thank you very much, Mike, for bringing us the news stories from Zambia. Now, if there's one thing that I absolutely love about Zambia, it's the beautiful, beautiful weather. I'm hoping for that kind of weather here today, but there's only one way to surely know, by checking out the forecast up next.
Thank you for staying with Africa. Good morning. Now, in our next story, we are in Cape Town, South Africa, speaking to Ari Hougaard. Ari?
Yes,
Good
a very good
morning.
morning. Good morning from Cape Town. Hope it's a great day in Windhoek, great day in Cape Town.
Okay. So in your first story, changes were made by the national minimum wage by the South African Department. Can you tell us more?
Yes, it is. Minimum wage is always a big discussion, and there was a 7% increase in minimum wages for the South African public. So there's different sectors of the economy that is influenced by that. And the big news is that domestic workers and also farm workers will also now get 100% of that minimum wage. It used to be 75%. And so the previously, the national minimum wage was below almost 20 Rand per hour. It's now 23 Rand and 19 cents per hour. So it's an increase of 6.9%. So CUSATO, the Labour Federation, they expressed that they're very happy with that. And also there's the farm workers, at least the farm workers will now get 100% or would be able to get 100% of the minimum wage. Unfortunately, the Public Works Department and the Community Works programs, they unfortunately not yet on 100%, but at least there's a 7% increase on the minimum wage. So that's good news for the man industry.
Indeed, indeed. Now, this story, I was obviously fascinated by it when it first popped up, but the Please Call Me inventor is entitled to 5% of total voice revenue from Vodacom, according to a High Court ruling. Sounds like big bucks.
Yes, it's big bucks, and he earned it. And it's related to if you have a good idea and you're still working for a company, and that was at that time it was in your employment, you're entitled to be rewarded for that. And it comes from 2008. It comes from a way back already, and it is in Kusana Makata. So the High Court ruled, that was Judge Wendy Hughes. She ruled that he is indeed he can get 5% of all revenue that goes back all the way to 2001 to 2022. There's in Kusana Makata. So that might be a big number. Just to go back on what happened previously, Vodacom did offer him 47 million in a final settlement, but he himself and his legal team rejected that, and now he can earn 5% of the revenue generated in that time. Might be as high as 70 billion, the revenue, 70 billion rand, the revenue over that time. So they need to take the calculators, but it will be more than 47 million. So it must be done in 1 month's time. That was the order to Vodacom. Vodacom said, like we expected, that they will appeal again. So it will go on a little bit later, but at least it's a big decision that was made by the court in favor of it.
Indeed.
Thank you so much, Ari. Now, in your next story, Sports Minister Nathi Matetu has called on for organizations to make good on their promise in 2018 to donate 50% of his monthly salary to the Nelson Mandela Foundation. Can you tell us more on this?
Yes, indeed. So it's the Sports Minister Nathi and Twitter that he indicated that there was a commission that was applicable to cricket. And there's the Sport Minister, and it was the social justice and nation-building experience or process that was done for cricket. Lots of things came out of that hearing to the extent that there was charges made to the national coach, Mark Boucher, that will come up in a hearing in a month or two time. That is Mark Boucher talking to Kagiso Rabada. And so there was lots of information that came from previous players, the players that used to play 10, 15 years ago. And Sport Minister Nathi and Twitter said that it is important that all codes must do a similar process. And obviously codes that's under pressure in this regard, that there's accusations of discrimination and racial discrimination, might be codes like rugby, netball and hockey, not to say that they're guilty, but he's asking for a social justice and nation-building process to also be in other codes as well. So it will be obviously a big process for all those sport codes, but hopefully it will get to the right answers. And the second part of your question there related to President Cyril Ramaphosa, that is linked to our feel-good story that we normally do at the end when we give South African news. And former President Cyril Ramaphosa in 2018, he promised half his salary that he wants to give to the Nelson Mandela Foundation. So that was quite a big statement he made. And the money was taken off his salary for that purpose, but it wasn't given to Nelson Mandela Foundation yet, but now it was, and it will go to early childhood development. So that is good on him.
Good on him indeed. Thank you very much, Ari, for bringing us the stories from South Africa.
Great indeed, and have a great day, everyone.
All right, now the International Monetary Fund has again urged the Nigerian government to stop subsidizing fuel. That and more in our economic news after the break.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, welcome to another exciting edition.
Thank you for staying with Africa. Good morning. Let's get straight into your economic news stories. Remove fuel subsidy, official exchange rate, IMF urges FG. Now, 2 weeks after the federal government suspended the removal of petrol subsidy, the International Monetary Fund has again urged the Nigerian government to stop subsidizing fuel. The Washington-based lender also asked the federal government to remove the official exchange rate. The federal government suspended its plan to remove the fuel subsidy this year. It also proposed to extend the subsidy removal implementation period by 18 months, saying it would engage the legislature for the amendment of the Petroleum Industry Act. The IMF, after consultation with Nigeria, said despite the recovery in oil prices, the general government's fiscal deficit was projected to widen in 2021 to 5.9% of GDP, reflecting implicit fuel subsidies and higher security spending.
Now, in our next story, Telecom takes 1.8 billion rands hit on the JCE after revealing problems in its mobile business. Over the past decade, Telkom's mobile business has been the driver of growth for the entire telecommunications group in the past year. MTN and Vodacom have been aggressive in cutting their mobile data prices, making Telkom's offering less appealing to consumers. In 2009, Telkom's board and management launched a strategy to modernize its operations for the digital age by moving away from its dual fixed line business and entering the growing and lucrative mobile market. This paid off for Telkom as it grew its mobile customer base and market share, becoming South Africa's third largest mobile operator after Vodacom and MTN, surpassing longer established Cell C. But there are signs that Telkom's mobile business, which has 16.4 million subscribers and has driven growth in the company's entire businesses over the past decade, is under pressure. Telkom is still growing the number of its active subscribers in line with its peers in South Africa's telecommunications industry. For 3 months or quarter to the end of December 2021, Telkom grew its active mobile subscribers by 10.4 million.
All right, Cuba slaps new tax on food sales. Cuba on Saturday announced a new 10% tax on retail food sales as the country endures economic woes marked by rampant inflation. The levy taking effect on Monday will target self-employed people and small and medium-sized companies in the retail food sector. Now, Cuban economist Pedro Monreal wrote on Twitter that the new tax will probably have two effects: higher food prices and more inequality among the Cuban people. Monetary reforms applied last year caused prices of goods and services to shoot up in Cuba, mainly those of food. Inflation last year came in at 70%. Cuba imports 80% of the food it consumes.
Malawi, South Sudan share export ideas. A meeting comprising a delegation from South Sudan and Malawi's Ministry of Trade has revealed gaps that need to be filled if export and import trade between the two countries is to flourish. Malawi hosted a delegation from South Sudan from January 26 to February 1 this year as a follow-up to the signing of the Memorandum of Understanding, MOU, on trade and economic cooperation between the two governments last year. Malawi Federation of Chambers of Commerce and Industry President James Chimwasi said Malawi has the capacity to export agricultural products, but there is a need to focus on cooperatives.
All right, now sometimes the exes are better off together. Well, we'll be talking about Lingard getting back to Manchester United right after the economic indicators. Thank you for staying with Africa. Good morning. Let's get straight into your sports, and we start off in the football world. Lingard returns to Man United squad after failed transfer move. Manchester United interim boss Ralph Rangnick said on Monday that there are no issues between himself and Jesse Lingard after the two men appeared to be at loggerheads last week over the midfielder's availability. Rangnick said Lingard had asked for time off after failing to secure a loan move ahead of United's FA FA Cup fourth-round tie against Middlesbrough, while the player himself claimed it was the club that advised him to sit out the match. The United boss attempted to clear up any confusion as he spoke to reporters to preview Tuesday's Premier League trip to relegation-threatened Burnley. With regard to Jesse, I have a very good relationship with him, said the German. We have to look forward now. There were no problems whatsoever between myself, Jesse, and vice versa.
In our next story, Eguavoen to lead Nigeria in World Cup playoff against Ghana. Nigeria said on Monday that caretaker coach Augustine Eguavoen will still be in charge of the Super Eagles for next month's 2022 World Cup playoff against Ghana. The Nigeria Football Federation, NFF, on Monday announced the reconstitution of the technical crew of the senior men national team, Super Eagles, with Augustine Eguavoen staying as interim technical advisor, while former Nigeria World Cup star and former U2 Boys head coach Emmanuel Amuneke drafted in as immediate assistant to Eguavoen. Former international and Barcelona winger Amuneke led Tanzania to qualifications for the 2019 Africa Cup of Nations in Egypt. Nigeria will face arch rivals Ghana home and away on March 23 and 29 for a place at this year's World Cup in Qatar.
All right, Tanzania to host pre-Commonwealth Games Africa Boxing Tournament. 14 countries will feature in the Africa Zone 3 Amateur Boxing Championship to be held at the National Indoor Stadium in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania from March 28 to April 4. The championship serves as the pre-Commonwealth Games trial for the 14 Africa Zone. 3 countries, according to Boxing Federation of Tanzania's Secretary General Lukelo Wilililo. Now, Wilililo named the countries as Kenya, Uganda, Burundi, Rwanda, Democratic Republic of Congo, Congo-Brazzaville, and Cameroon. Also on the list are Gabon, Chad, Central Africa Republic, Ethiopia, Sudan, Equatorial Guinea, and the host Tanzania. He also said that BFT have already selected a provisional national team of 6 boxers for the event. Names of the boxers would be revealed after completing procedures as per BFT regulations. We expect to select the best amateur boxers in the country who we think would represent the country well both in Africa's Zone 3 Championships and the Commonwealth Games.
Linde stars for WP on opening day of T20 Challenge. George Linde has obviously found married life to be to his liking as he led Western Province to victory over the Boland Rocks with a fine display with both bat ball and on the opening day of the CST T20 Challenge at ST George Park on Monday. Linda, who pulled out of the Proteas tour to New Zealand due to his wedding last weekend, was outstanding with the ball as he took T13 in 4 overs as the Boland were restricted to 142 over 6 after electing to bat first.
Now, I happen to be a Western Province fan from cricket to rugby, and if marriage is making us better, gentlemen, it's time to put a ring on it. All right, that brings us to the end of our sports news stories. After the break, your highlights. From 7 a.m., you can trust that Africa Good Morning will be here bringing you all the news you need to know happening on the African continent and beyond. All right, now let's get into today's highlights, just in case you missed the top stories. UN, 13 million face hunger in Horn of Africa as drought worsens. Tunisian police close offices of top judicial watchdog, locking staff out. NATCOM warns against threats to bomb KM the third airport. Israel Prime Minister vows action as police Pegasus spying scandal widens. Around 10 million people living with HIV are still not on antiretroviral therapy. Remove fuel subsidy, official exchange rate, IMF urges FG. Lingard returns to Man United squad after failed transfer move. Those have been our stories.
Thank you for joining us today. And with that, we have ended our show. Do remember that AGM is repeated on our website channel 1up2 from 8:30 to 9:30. Please send us your email remarks regarding our program to agm_2centsworth@nmh.com.na or post on our Facebook and Twitter pages. We also welcome short videos or even photos of happenings in your part of Africa and will gladly include it in our segment of our programs, so please do share. And with that, from me, Glenna Rashipura, do join us again tomorrow, same time, same place.
And from me, Ashwin Berry Swerai Jakanaka.